And I ain't gonna lie, I don't know if I'm drunk off the yak or that IV, because I am feeling kind of loopy right now. So I'm feeling good right now, man. You know, I feel like, you know, as a team in the second half, you know, we really showed who we were, you know, who the Miami Dolphins were.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
It doesn't matter if it's the yak or the IV or just the massive amount of fantasy points, Tyreek Hill. You get drunk, my friend. You have earned it. It is noon on a Monday on Peacock, but it is 5 o'clock somewhere, Connor Rodgers. I am Matthew Berry. Connor Rodgers as well. We all follow you, of course, on Twitter at Connor J. Rodgers. And, dude, you can't stop the Dolphins. You can only hope to contain them.
You cannot stop them. What a wild Sunday. Wild 4 fourth-quarter touchdowns against Baltimore.
Right.
It's not like they were out there doing it against, you know, a bottom-barrel team, against a Baltimore defense that there are big expectations for. And Tua puts to bed some of the hate for a week.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, look, so first off, crazy week 2, lots
Insane.
to get to. We're going to break it all down, but I think you got to start in Miami,
Yes.
where, to your point, Tua Tagovailoa throws 6 touchdowns, 4 in the fourth quarter, as you mentioned, throws 50 passes, almost 470 yards. Monster game for him, the most fantasy points of his career, obviously. Career high in passing yards and touchdowns in a single game. If you just took his fourth quarter stats, he would be among the league leaders.
Be a great day.
I mean, right? It'd be a great day.
Hang it up.
So let's break this down. A couple of things that worked in their favor. Obviously, game script, you know, they're down by 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, both banged up, both on the injury list coming into the game. Both played, but both played under 80% of the snaps.
Yep.
Marcus Peters played under 65% of the snaps. There were some blown coverages there. So whether it's, you know, I mean, like I'm not an NFL quarterback, but on a couple of those, I feel like, no, they would have to stay and wait and hold up, which Tyreek did on one of those.
One of them he did.
Wait, let me get the ball. But I feel like I could have hit them. Like they were that wide open.
I think you'd have a shot. Peters didn't really look like himself yet coming back from this knee injury. He didn't even play week 1. Marlon Humphrey obviously banged up with the groin injury. But put all that aside, what Mike McDaniel is doing with this Miami offense, with the speed of this Miami offense, not only puts him in line for way too early Coach of the Year, you know, rankings right now.
Sure.
But the fact that you can trust this offense, right, Barry? I mean, with him calling this, with these 2 wide receivers, if Tua is going to be efficient like he was in the second half, you can trust this offense.
Well, trust is a strong word, but certainly these guys are all in your lineup for the foreseeable future. And what I mean, these guys, I mean Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I'm still not 100% sold that Tua Tagovailoa is an elite QB1. Mm-hmm. Monster game, likely his best game of his career, let alone this season, right? I mean, we just don't expect 6 touchdowns, let alone 4 in the fourth quarter. But the speed of Tyreek Hill, the speed of Jalen Waddle, think about how this team was put together. They also added Chase Edmonds, and we'll get to him a little bit later in the show. But they have speed out the wazoo on this team, and they're taking advantage of it. And so given the aggressive play-calling nature of Mike McDaniel, I don't know if you saw that Kevin Durant tweet. He's just like, they were running 4 verts every play.
Yeah.
But, you know, like a Madden play, basically.
Yeah, the bomb.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just literally like, yo, go long. I'll hit one of you.
Yep.
And by the way, he's right. Now, it'll be interesting to see, will teams adjust, right? Because we saw that with Mahomes and the Chiefs, where everyone said, all right, we're going to play too deep. We're not going to let you beat us bad. But between those two, having both those guys that are so good at yards after the catch, both those guys, we heard Tyreek mention the yak, they're both so good once you get them in space, and you've got 2 of those guys. That's the other thing, is like, and by the way, Edmonds, I don't know that he has the elite speed of a Hill or a Waddle, but Chase Edmonds no slouch.
Sure. Yeah, not at all.
So
and Mostert's speed. I mean, this is an offense loaded with speed. That's what it's built on.
I think the takeaway is listen, if you wound up with Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, you are loving life. Like, these are potentially league-winning wide receivers. I think that the concern on Hill, we always talk about in the preseason, we talked about the preseason quarterback upgrades, right? Going from, again, the example we use is Kupp going from Goff to Stafford. What do you do when you get a quarterback downgrade? Well, look, I'm sorry. It's still a downgrade from Mahomes to Tagovailoa, but apparently not if they're going to just scheme him open this way, both getting double-digit targets, both getting double-digit receptions in this one. Again, but the question is, am I selling high? You're not selling high.
No.
Both guys are Tyreek's obviously an elite wide receiver 1. I think Waddle is a borderline wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 going forward. I will say this about Tagovailoa, the last thing here, is that I'm not ready to buy him fully yet as a top 12 fantasy quarterback, as a QB1, but I'm a lot closer to it. I mean, one monster game, but remember, he was also very pedestrian in week 1 against the Patriots, which is a good defense. But so I'm pumping the brakes a little bit, but if you just lost Trey Lance and Tagovailoa is out there because he's not 100% rostered.
Grab him, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I think he's a viable option. We'll find out as the week goes along about Justin Herbert if potentially he misses more time. They play Buffalo. They play Buffalo in week 3. We'd expect Bills' very good defense, but again, that could be another one where game script works in favor of the Dolphins.
Yeah, it's going to be, kind of that gut check game of, is this sustainable? And not this, right? You're not expecting this each week. You're not expecting 6 touchdowns, fantasy points leader, or anything like that, but high-end efficiency and maybe finishing as a top 10 quarterback would be insane for Tua.
Right. One of the concerns on Jalen Waddle coming into the season was, what about target share? Because he had such insane target share last year. And it was one of the, I'll own it. That was one of my concerns about Waddle. Never question the talent. I'm worried about his target share in this offense. Well, 77% of Tua's 469 passing yards yesterday went to either Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. 77%. So we'll get into the running backs a little bit later in the show here, but the Dolphins are looking like one of the more exciting offenses in the NFL and a place to look for fantasy goodness. So let's talk about another place that, we weren't really expecting Miami. We thought McDaniel would improve that offense. We didn't know it would improve it that much.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a surprising offense through 2 weeks of the season. And then another surprising offense.
The Lions, man.
Is in Detroit.
Crazy.
Okay. Jared Goff is, if you looked at this is why it drives me crazy to do rankings. Can I just be honest? It drives me crazy to do rankings. Look, we have a full screen here of the week 5 fantasy leaders at quarterback.
It's comedy.
Look at this. So Lamar Jackson, number 1. Okay, that's fine. We all like Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson's a former fantasy MVP, top 5 fantasy quarterback drafted this year. That makes sense. Then you go down the list. Tua Tagovailoa. Okay, down big, crazy game, 4 touchdowns, 200 passing yards in the fourth quarter. Right, fine. Number 3, Carson Wentz. Make Carson Wentz great again. Quarterback number 4, Joe Flacco.
He's 37.
37-year-old backup Joe Flacco at 27 fantasy points, 26.88 to be exact. And then number 5, Jared Goff of your 1-1 Detroit Lions. Kudos to the Lions and their fans, by the way, beating my Commanders, my previously undefeated Commanders.
It's a hell of a run.
It was a hell of a run. We had a great run atop the NFC East. What are you going to do? Hopefully we get back there one day. What do we make of this Lions offense? How legit is this?
It's really legit because of the offensive line. The offensive line is so good and so undervalued over the summer because a lot of people weren't expecting them to take or weren't ready for this kind of jump, whether it's Penei Sewell. Taylor Decker's a really nice player. This was without Jonah Jackson, okay? He's one of their best offensive linemen. He didn't play this weekend. He was out, and they did this. So what that tells me is DeAndre Swift in a great place.
I forget the guy's name. But Dan Campbell, did you see that he brought back the guy that got cut after training camp?
Yes.
And offensive lineman, he played guard for them. He got cut after training camp, came back, 6-year journeyman, and the first guy that Dan Campbell sent to the podium to talk to the press was that guy. And I apologize, I forget the guy.
Great story, though.
Great story, awesome. Again, Jay and I talked about this earlier in the preseason, that we like Dan Campbell for Coach of the Year as a season-long bet. Dan Skipper, I'm being told, in my ear is the name of the guy, the offensive lineman. Just a great story, just whatever. Journeyman, kicked around, and that was the first guy that got talked to the press. Good for Dan Campbell. Good for the Lions. I hate to see my Commanders lose, but it's a great story for the Lions. But I think there's a couple things here. We've talked about this before in the show. When Jared Goff gets time, he's not terrible.
Fine. Yes.
This is a guy who's a number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
Guys that get drafted number 1 overall in the NFL usually are pretty good. The Jamarcus Russells of the world are few and far between.
Yep.
For a number 1 overall quarterback to completely, flame out. And so Jared Goff, who, by the way, has a top 10 fantasy finish at the quarterback position on his resume.
That's the key thing.
He's done this before. So when you keep him clean, and oh, by the way, you give him some weapons, and we can talk about those weapons in a second. I'm more a believer in Jared Goff than I think most people might be. Of the list of the people, I'm not believing in Flacco, and I weirdly am not even sure I totally buy in on Tua yet. Again, he's had one good game, one bad game, But Goff has been good 2 weeks in a row. Carson Wentz has been good 2 weeks in a row. We're talking fantasy-wise.
Yeah.
Goff and Wentz have both been good 2 weeks in a row. Lamar is obviously Lamar. Kind of buy it when you think about that offensive line, and then somebody like Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Monster weekend.
Through 2 weeks, he's the fourth best wide receiver in fantasy. Tied for second in targets. That's the thing. He's got 24 targets in 2 weeks. Since week 13, I'm sorry, I take this back. Since week 12 of last season, Connor. Week 12 of last season, he hasn't seen a target share below 31%.
It's absurd.
Those are Cooper
volume.
Kupp numbers.
Absurd
Those are
volume.
like absurd volume. So pass-friendly offense, clearly a connection with Jared Goff. By the way, give the guy credit. He's good.
He's really good.
He's hashtag good at the game.
Yes. Doesn't matter that he was a fourth-round pick. He had an insanely strong finish last year. And guess what? At some point this year, Jameson Williams is going to come back, and that is going to help these guys. That's not going to hurt these guys. Sure, maybe the volume goes down a little bit, but Jameson Williams, the vertical threat that he's going to open up, is going to be huge underneath for Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift.
Rest of the season, who would you rather have in fantasy, Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jalen Waddle?
I think Amon-Ra.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But that's what we're talking about here. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a wide receiver one.
Yes.
Forget where you drafted him. He got drafted in the mid-20s. Like I think my friend and colleague Dwayne McFarland, he said, you're looking for this year's Cooper Kupp? Amon-Ra St. Brown. I agree with it. So I'm just sitting here saying, not a fluke, massive target share, talented guy, functional offense. Like, if I was trying to trade for Amon-Ra St. Brown, like, the way to value him is like he is an elite wide receiver one. He is right there. Like, rather have him than Waddle. Like, I mean, he is right there, with one of the top 7 or 8 guys. I think I'd rather have him than Mike Evans.
Yeah.
Mike Evans has more touchdown equity, but once Godwin comes back and Brady's showing some signs of,
this is his offense, Amon-Ra's. It's his offense. They're a team that's showing they could throw.
Yeah. Just, again, that massive target share, there's a floor there. I don't know that he gets 116. I don't know that he gets 2 touchdowns every week. I don't know that he gets 68 yards rushing at the one reverse.
Yeah.
Stupid Commanders. Our defense is brutal. Yeah. But the volume is legit and the talent is legit, and it's a good quarterback. It is a quarterback that can get him the ball. It is a good quarterback for him, I should say. Nice game for DeAndre Swift here. Like, a little concerning the usage, but I think you sort of get bailed out by the touchdown. Jamal Williams got more run here, but he came into the game questionable with that ankle.
That's the key. They were clearly limiting him. The 51% of snaps for DeAndre Swift, to me, doesn't tell the story of this is who he is in this offense. It tells you who he was this week because they were trying to limit with that injury.
Yeah, 13 touches for Jamal Williams, just 7 for DeAndre Swift, but he made the most of it, and it just goes to show just how impressive he is. Again, as you mentioned, played just 51% of the snaps. But through the first 2 weeks, he's the 4th best running back in fantasy. My bold prediction at the beginning of the year, DeAndre Swift, number 1 running back in fantasy. He's getting there through the first 2 games. The Lions, shout out to Boomer wherever you are. The Lions have averaged 405 yards a game. That is 4th most in the NFL.
Crazy.
Let's hear it for Dan Campbell and one pride. Okay, let's move on now. So, but by the way, and I'll also just say very quickly, I think Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders offense is also legit for fantasy purposes.
Yeah.
That loss was not on Carson Wentz. It was not on that offense. The defense couldn't get a stop.
No.
This vaunted Jack Del Rio offense could not get a stop, especially when they needed to. Joey Sly misses the extra point. I don't understand why the Commanders went for 2 when they did, but whatever. The fact of the matter is that this is the 2nd straight game where Carson Wentz has thrown multiple touchdown passes, has attempted over 40 passes. We believe in the talent of Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin. Logan Thomas gets in the end zone here. I get to mention Logan Thomas again, Connor. And obviously you've got Jahan Dotson who gets in the end zone again. Curtis Samuel's that's legit. That you look at the usage, you look at the routes he's running, all the different kind of ways they're using Curtis Samuel. This is legit. By the way, still not 100% rostered. We'll talk about that tomorrow on the Waiver Wire Show.
And the 2 things with these teams, both Detroit and Washington, it's a good thing for fantasy. Their defenses might just be, in reality, this bad that it's going to help their offenses on fantasy. I think that was a big takeaway for me, too, is those defenses aren't where they expected to be, and it's putting a little bit more on the offense's plate to throw.
Both Swift and Carson Wentz made the love list this previous week. I mentioned that because I had a couple of misses on the hate list. Just going to own that right now. I had Tua. I'm just going to own it. I had Tua on the hate list. I'm just going to own that. It is what it is.
I would have done the same thing.
Against the Ravens.
Baltimore.
Against Baltimore, he looked bad in week number 1. And at the time that I turned it in, which is Wednesday, I didn't know how banged up the Ravens. Anyway, what are you going to do?
At least you didn't victory lap at halftime.
No, exactly.
You could have.
I could have. That's why you don't victory lap at halftime, because then you end up looking
don't drop
stupid.
the ball before the goal line.
I'm going to own that one. I'm sure we'll talk more about Tua being on the hate list later this week. Let's move on to a subject that is not great.
Yeah.
Trey Lance.
Yeah, done. It's really disappointing. Done for the year. Going to have the ankle surgery. You look at this, and now the Niners are in the spot where Trey Lance has not played a lot of football now for many years. Yeah. Going back to college where he lost his final season, his rookie year. Now this year he gets one full game.
So I think there's a larger conversation about what's the value of Trey Lance in Dynasty, to your point, because by the time he gets on the field next year, he will have, as you said, more or less been out of football for 3 years. Through no fault of his own in some cases and some bad luck. But he'll have played, something like 5 games in the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Which for a young quarterback that even the most optimistic of scouts were like, he's a developmental guy. Right? I mean, I'm sure when you were scouting him, you do all the draft prep for Bleacher Report, Connor, and I'm sure when you were looking at him coming out of college, we get the skill set, but he's a developmental prospect.
Ball of clay. But you need time to mold it, and they have not had that time with him because now he can't be on the field.
So disappointing here in terms of Trey Lance. So I certainly think there's a larger conversation in the offseason about what his dynasty value is, but it's certainly a lot less. He's not – if I could get something reasonably good, if I had Trey Lance on my team, I might wait till a couple of weeks from now. And if I was trying to go for it this year, that's a piece I would be very willing to give up in a dynasty league for somebody that's playing for next year to try to move forward because there's a lot of other quarterbacks out there that I think I would prefer at this point than Trey Lance, just because we haven't seen it. And we just don't know if we are going to.
He's someone you could throw in with a package of picks if you need an impact piece, and that's the reality right now. It's a dart.
Yeah, and I think the upside, the dream of him is better than what may eventually become the reality of him fantasy-wise. But let's move into the present day here and talk about, I think if there is, again, no one wishes ill will to Trey Lance. Hopefully he gets better and gets better soon. But I think what I would say here is that for our purposes, which is trying to predict.
Yeah.
That's an easier word
there we
to
go.
say. Let's try that. We're trying to predict what the Niners are going to do on offense for fantasy and for betting. Knowing that Jimmy Garoppolo is under center sort of helps because we have a blueprint. We know what this offense is from last year.
It's volatile now.
Yeah, it's much less volatile. Again, Deebo Samuel, he's going to be a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. They'll use him more in the passing game, rushing game. I would say I think there was concern last year that, with Lance coming in, does he have less designed runs, Deebo, because Lance will take his. No, Deebo's still going to get, 5 carries-ish a game and probably use him around the goal line here. And I think this is good for Jeff Wilson Jr., right? Because, again, I think they're going to want, with Garoppolo not being a mobile quarterback, they're going to want a traditional run game. Wilson led the teams in carries and running back snaps on Sunday. He had 37 running back snaps, 18 for 84. He gets vultured by Kyle Juszczyk at the goal line. Super annoying. Wilson gets it all the way down there. And instead of rewarding the guy the way that the Cowboys rewarded Tony Pollard, no. They bring in stupid Kyle Juszczyk.
Twice.
Yeah, by the way, and Kyle Juszczyk is not stupid, to be clear here. But, you're like, come on, what are we doing
Drugs
here?
and nuts.
Come on, give Wilson the bunny touchdown. He got you down there. But I think if there was another story here is that TDP, Tyrion Davis-Price, he gets 14 rushes in this game. He had the most early down snaps of a running back. He played on some early downs. So it feels like there's now at least a pecking order. So it's Wilson and TDP.
Yeah, and it's pretty clear, like you said. I think with Ty Davis-Price, he had the 120-yard run, and then he couldn't really get anything going on the other 13-yard carries. Wilson is the clear-cut RB1, which in a Niners offense, that's a good feeling.
It is. I think he's a borderline top 20 play going forward the rest of the year, but I do think, given both Wilson's injury history and now that we have, I do think if you're trying to stash somebody, because it's going to be 2 months before we see Elijah Mitchell back in uniform, TDP would be a guy that you can acquire here. Last piece here. And again, it's still also, by the way, they've been without George Kittle for 2 games.
Yeah.
And so what happens when he comes back? But I think he'll help the run game. He'll help Garoppolo, certainly. But to me, suddenly there is now fantasy signs of life in Brandon Ayuk that I don't think were there necessarily with Trey Lance, but are certainly there with Jimmy Garoppolo. averaged double-digit fantasy points last year with Jimmy G under center. I think he's a viable wide receiver 4 with some upside here.
Doesn't it feel like everybody gets a little boost with Jimmy G, and that's not a knock on Trey Lance, but more of the player Trey Lance is. He can run more. He could do different things. But Jimmy G, you've already seen this offense last year. You know exactly what you're getting now.
100%. He can run this offense. He can run it the way it was intended, and we can talk about, whether the 49ers ever should have sort of made this move, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch sort of pushed all their chips in the middle on Trey Lance, and it wasn't looking great. And so now, because they couldn't find a trade partner for Garoppolo, and you don't want to say an injury was lucky. It wasn't lucky, but they do sort of get bailed out on what potentially was not a great decision by the fact they now have Jimmy G starting for them. Ayuk played 88% of the offensive snaps, the most by any Niners wide receiver or running back. Should we talk about the Sunday night game?
Sunday Night Football.
Packers
backfield cooking.
You know what happens when you free Aaron Jones?
Good things.
Good things happen. Many good things happen. 49% of the Packers carries went to A.J. Dillon. 41% of the Packers carries went to Aaron Jones. But you know what? Dude had 18 touches. There you go.
Yep.
How hard was that? Just give me 18 touches for Aaron Jones. You can still get 18 touches for A.J. Dillon. I think he actually had 19 because he had 1 reception. It's fine. So here we go. You see it here on your screen. So 18 total touches for Aaron Jones, 19 total touches for A.J. Dillon. But Aaron Jones much more effective. 160 total yards there and 2 touchdowns for the man that was free on Sunday night. But by the way, A.J. Dillon also had a nice game. Here's the takeaway, I think, on both these guys. First off, thank goodness. But that Aaron Jones is finally free. Both these guys are RB1s.
Yes, play them. Easily.
Both got, again, they got Jenkins back on the offensive line. Hopefully Bakhtiari is back next week as well. But they ran the ball effectively. Now, they play Tampa Bay next week. That's a tough run defense. But still, both guys can be involved in the passing game here. I think both guys are borderline RB1s. Again, they each had 18 touches in this game. You get 15 to 20 touches in an Aaron Rodgers offense, you're an RB1. I'm sorry. So better things will happen. So I think A.J. Dillon was on my preseason love list, as was Aaron Jones. I think both guys are going to ultimately end up beating their ADP, and certainly Dillon. They're both locked in as top 12 running backs for me the rest of the way.
Snap count the same, 40 for Jones, 39 for Dillon, so nearly identical right there. And, Jones is a guy that teams that struggle against the outside run, he's going to carve him up. And A.J. Dillon, he's such a goal line threat that, like you said, there's so much faith in both of them week in and week out.
And this is what they want to do. Again, with question marks around the offensive passing game, I mean, Rodgers, talks about the fact, we've heard Rodgers talk about this, right? Just about how much he likes those running backs and how comfortable he is with those running backs. And, for me, do we have the sound? Do we have the?
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers had some nice things to say.
Listen
about
to this. Here you go.
Here's
12 talking about the running backs.
Both those guys wake up and it's the best day of their life. 33 and 28 coming to work, and it's a great day every single day. So those are fun guys to play with. They truly enjoy each other, pull for each other. Very different styles, but I applaud their growth over the years. They are examples of what it means to be a pro, and especially here, the ascension year after year, and then just the art of being a good teammate.
By the way, I feel like Aaron Rodgers is doing a press conference about me. He'd be like, Matthew is the example of what not a pro looks like here. Just, the dissension of him. Like
different styles.
Pretty different, different styles, none of which we can figure out. We don't know even what his style is.
But every day is the best day.
Every day is
so
the
you
best
did
day
fit
of my
that
life.
mold.
Yeah, I haven't been fired, so always exciting here. Yeah, look, I think the takeaway here is, again, that just like both guys, I think, are set it and forget it running backs. Like, this is not a committee. This is one of those rare instances where it's, quote, a committee, but both guys are very valuable parts of the committee. We'll see how they do next week against Tampa Bay, but I think they're going to be effective. I think both guys are starts. Just set it and forget it.
Yep. And one that's a little more difficult, the Chicago Bears, that they were playing. Not a lot of set it and forget it over there.
Dude.
They won't let Justin Fields throw the ball.
Dude.
28 pass attempts in 2 games.
Dude.
It hurts everyone. The run game, okay. Obviously, David Montgomery had a good night.
Yeah.
But this Bears offense.
Dude. How many different ways can I say dude? The fact here is like, yeah. I'm going to – David Montgomery. Never a huge fan.
Sure.
Never a huge fan of David Montgomery, but played 80% of the offensive snaps. He got 63% of the carries in week 2, after 52% in week 1. In a game in which they were going up against a tough defense, they were getting nothing else going on offense, and the game script was against them. They were down big. David Montgomery still got it going, held off Khalil Herbert, who also, by the way, looked good. I think when Khalil Herbert gets a chance, you're like, that kid can play. But so kudos to David Montgomery, who managed to play through a lot of adversity there. Again, I'm not the biggest fan, but credit where credit is due. Kid played well last night, winds up as a top 10 fantasy running back with 15.6 fantasy points, almost 140 total yards on 17 total touches. Plays the Texans in week number 3. For all the Broncos struggles against Houston, like, you can run on Houston.
Yes.
We've seen this before, so Montgomery should be in line for another workload here. Other than that, I don't know what to do with this offense.
Through the air, there's just nothing. Actually, I lied. There's not nothing. There's negative yards. Darnell Mooney had 1 catch for negative 4 yards. So there's less than nothing right now.
All right, so here's a question for you. What has 2 thumbs and the same number of NFL receptions this season as Cole Kmet? This guy, right? I mean, it's like, I apologize, America. I thought Cole Kmet was going to be a thing. I was wrong. It's not Connor's fault. Don't yell at Connor.
You still can.
It's not Jay Croucher's fault. It's me. Your old pal Matty B. Your old pal Matty B led you astray, led you to Cole Kmet land, because we looked at all the targets last year and the talent, and we're like, well, he's gonna get better. I don't know if he's getting better because he's not even getting the ball, because no one else has gotten better. Coach hadn't gotten better. Justin Fields hadn't gotten better. Nothing's gotten better, except me. I've gotten better admitting the fact that I led you astray here on Cole Kmet, because 2 weeks ago I was all in on Cole Kmet, and now I'm not, because I'm wrong. I was wrong. He's got 2 targets, 0 fantasy points, 0.0.
And they're not even trying to get him the ball. That's the thing right there, where there's no.
They can't get him the ball. They don't know how to get him the ball. Do you think? Real talk. Well, I'm just jokes aside. Jokes aside. Just between you and I. No one's watching.
Yeah, no one's watching this.
If Cole Kmet went up to Matt Eberflus and said, "Hi, I'm Cole Kmet," would head coach Eberflus know he's talking to Cole Kmet, or would he have to take his word for it? If I lined up 5 guys that sort of look like Cole Kmet, and one of them was Cole Kmet, and the other 4 were sort of Cole Kmet doppelgangers,
yeah.
And we said to Eberflus or offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, okay, which one's Cole Kmet? Do you think they could pick him out? How many chances would you give him?
God, he's gonna need at least 3.
Dude, here's the thing. If you counted on Cole Kmet because you listened to more on me, I think it is time to move on until we see something. There's nothing functional in this offense. And the other thing is Darnell Mooney, who was also a big sleeper for me in the preseason. I'm not dropping Darnell Mooney just yet. I still believe there's talent. We at least saw Mooney be productive with Justin Fields last year for a stretch of time. It wasn't a ton, but towards the end of last year, Mooney was a productive fantasy wide receiver with Justin Fields under center. So I'm not dropping Mooney just yet because I still believe that talent is there. But I don't know when you could start him at any time. They're playing the Texans, right? The Texans should have beaten the Broncos, and they took the Colts. Maybe the Colts aren't that good, but I don't think the Texans are going to be feisty. Like, that's not a layover. That's not a we got this game for the Bears in week 3.
No, teams are not lighting them up through the air right now, the Texans.
So
it's not a get-well game necessarily.
I don't know. I mean, it just, the Bears, what are we doing?
Staying away.
What are we doing? Last thing on the Sunday night game here is it was nice to see Allen Lazard. They didn't need him that much, but it was nice to see him get into the end zone, get him back on the field. I do think he's going to, we saw signs of life from Sammy Watkins as well. I will say that it feels like if you're starting a Packers, for all the Romeo Doubs hype in the preseason, and I know Watson should have had a 75-yard touchdown in week 1, feels like if you're starting a piece of the Packers passing game going forward, Allen Lazard's the only guy you can consider until further notice.
Yeah, he gets the snap count. They are obsessed with him as a blocker, and that leads to opportunities for him in the pass game.
If you are on the field with 12, good things are going to happen. If you're on the field with me and Connor, sometimes good things will happen just when don't listen to us about Cole Kmet. We're back with more football talk in the next segment. Did you look at a rundown? Do you know what we're talking about?
Panic offense is coming up soon.
Oh, that's a good topic. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.